morning, Chairman.
Good day, Rachel, and everybody else who happens to be here. Welcome to the meeting of the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership. You're going to do a roll call, aren't you, Rachel?
Yes, I am. I will ask members to confirm their presence. If you could just say present when I call your name out. Councillor Pole.
Present.
Good morning, everyone.
Councillor Stevens.
Present.
Councillor Bushell.
Present.
Councillor Foster.
Present.
Councillor Head. Councillor Gamber-Jones.
Present.
Councillor Dr Mosley.
Present.
Councillor Brearley.
Morning, present.
Councillor Wright. Councillor Wright.
Yeah, he's here. He's just not wide awake.
Thank you. Can I also ask the following officers to confirm their presence? John Coates.
Present.
Matthew Mitchell.
Present.
Rachel Stamp.
Present.
Steve Bird.
Present.
Victoria Burgess. David Steels.
Present.
Charlotte Payne.
Present.
Ian Yates.
Present.
Adi Selby.
Morning, present.
Have I missed anyone from that list? No. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Do we have any apologies for absence then, please?
I haven't received any apologies, Chairman.
No. Excuse me. No, nor have I, so we'll move on. Declarations of members' interest. Do you have any interest to declare in any of the items on the agenda other than those that you've already registered? If so, please speak now. We have 10. No, I can't be bothered with that, so we'll move on. Nobody's indicated. There's nobody indicating the chat function, so we'll move on with that. Minutes of the previous meeting from the 9th of July. If you have any comments to make on that, please make them now. Otherwise,
yeah, Eddie. I noticed on those present. I remember being at that meeting, but I'm not shown in the members present.
oh, yeah, I remember you being there too, but you couldn't stay.
I know I had some communication issues at one point, but I was definitely there, and I definitely contributed.
You did. I thought the minutes actually said that you had to leave early or something, so you must have been there for you to be able to leave.
I was there right to the end. I just think I couldn't do anything on the screen, so I left it as it was until the end.
After all your comments through Ian. Yeah, we'll get that amended, Pete.
Thank you.
So can you take that on, please, Rachel, and just alter those?
Yes, I'll amend that. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that amendment, can I take it then, please, that members are happy that they are a reasonably true and accurate record of what took place? Again, if we do this by dissent, if you disagree, please show. There are no disagreements, so we'll take those as being carried. Thank you. Next bit. This is the bit I really enjoy, where I sit back and just enjoy myself for a while, listen to you stumble over all the things you have or haven't been doing. It's the partner updates, please. Who would like to be first? Ian.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you.
I guess. Sorry, Eddie?
I was just saying thank you for taking on the challenge.
That's no worries. Just like all the other authorities, seeing as I'm first, we get obviously in this second phase of the COVID, so you can imagine that everyone's updates is going to be partly involving that world. I guess from my point of view at South Stephen, it has been the second wave where it's really been biting. It is quite significant when we had all the contingencies, and to be honest, the partnership arrangement, the working officer group, and I've said this and I wanted to repeat it, to thank all the partners in Lincolnshire, because working together whether it be the health and safety group and all the input from everybody around the table, that has really helped our resilience as a team. And it's been really brilliant, that partnership working. So since I'm first up, I'll say that. I think it's really gelled us as officers in terms of how we can help each other, and it's enhanced that partnership working. So I've found that very, very worthwhile, and it's been brilliant. And when it hits, though, in the officers and in your teams and on the crews, although we treat everybody in bubbles, in terms of the impact with the crews, it has a big impact. It has an effect. We've had some of those cases that have been live, positive cases, whereas before we never had those, and we've had to deal with that. But all the arrangements in place have helped us do that, and we've managed to keep running the services through. Obviously now we've got much better testing arrangements in place, and you can bring people back much faster than we did in the first wave. If we had any that went off in the first wave, which we didn't. So we're now in a much, much better position. So it's day by day, to be honest. Our contingency arrangements are in place in terms of backup drivers and the like, but it is a very active morning by morning, day by day approach to it, monitoring and making sure that our services are in place. Just a bit of stats in terms of heads up. We've had to double our capacity, not had to, but we've matched the demand on bulkies. Our collecting of bulky items have increased by 35-40%. That's continuing to increase, so we've doubled that capacity. Fly tipping, as everyone knows, we've had, like everybody else, some areas are worse than others, a 42% increase in volume there. But things like green waste, etc., have managed to continue and have been well received by the customers. And obviously that's helped with the whole, because I see it as a comprehensive thing. Whatever we can do, along with the county services, we're all trying to service our customers. And to be honest, as a partnership, it's been working very well. That's my update.
Thanks very much, Ian. Yeah, I think it's only right and proper you thank all the officers the way you did, because that is what I feel too. There are reports I get back from SOWG from our officers to show that everybody's working together. I think the response from the public has shown that they appreciate the efforts that everybody's gone to keep services running. And I think it's been a marvellous effort. And when you look around the country, we're doing really well. I mean, most people seem to have caught up, but we didn't have the issues that other people had in the first place. So I think that's a credit to you all, and thanks very much for your efforts. So well done, Ian. Well done, the rest of the team. Who would like to be next? Go on, then, John.
Better to volunteer than be volunteered, Chair, I think. Thank you. So, from the county's perspective, the EFW successfully completed its annual maintenance shutdown and dealt with all of the items that the manager wished to have dealt with. As Ian rightly says, we're into uncharted territory once again with second lockdown. A lot of the hard work that was done during the first lockdown for safety protocols and safe methods of working at facilities, so the transfer stations, the EFW, the MRF, they've all been re-implemented to try and protect the workforce as much as possible and maintain services going forward. That's the same on our recycling centres. So the booking system is what we're using to manage things as best we can in these challenging times. We are continuing to progress more detailed work now on potential sites for the replacement recycling centres that we have in our capital programme. We're starting to do some preparatory work for the second round of consultations coming out from DEFRA next year. And from the county's perspective, we're going to be looking at what technology choices we will have for anaerobic digestion. So we'll be starting that piece of work shortly. And finally, we've done our first sampling and compositional audits on some of the waste streams arising in Lincolnshire with our new sampling station at Boston transfer station. And Rachel's just in the process of recruiting the full-time staff to be able to have that provision in Lincolnshire. So we're going to be able to get very rich and very detailed information on the waste and recycling collected by the districts to help inform the options that we'll be considering going forward, particularly in light of 2023 and the changes that the government are going to bring in. So thank you, Chair. That's my update.
Thanks, John. Yeah. So, Adi, you're looking very pensive there, and I ain't spoken to you for a while, so I think you could be next.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everybody. I think I'd just reflect what the others have already said around the value of the partnership working in relation to the situation we're in at the moment, and it brings much reassurance, I think, that everybody's working in a similar way and enduring similar issues and resolving them in similar ways. So good work from the officer group, as others have already said. We have had 2 confirmed cases within our operational staff. They are street cleansers. We're both working on the same van, so we're able to isolate both the people and the vehicle as well. So we're hoping that it stays at that, really, but it feels like it's very close now. So we'll see how it goes. With regard to our new depot, we're breaking ground next week, which is fantastic after 30 years of hurt. We're slightly behind our original schedule, but due to be complete late summer or early autumn in 2021, and then moving our operations there immediately. We have added photovoltaic cells onto the building as well to make it as environmentally efficient as possible, and we did have an independent assessment of the environmental credentials of the build done recently, which shows that we're doing everything that is practicable at the moment to make the building and the site as environmentally efficient as it possibly can be. Paper and card, we've got a report to members in January for the approval of further work in the project, just to monitor the ongoing trials and the rollout elsewhere, and then we're looking at a report for decision in late summer of 2021. All our services are pretty much running as normal, apart from obviously the street cleansing I've mentioned, small part of that. Bulky uptake has increased, as others I think are the same. Our garden waste uptake, increase in subscriptions in year, hopefully continue next year. And we've got 1 extra collection in early December this year for residents, which members wanted to do this year. Fly tipping rates remain very high, but now appear to have flatlined. So at least we've stemmed the tide, although it's the rates continue to be a lot higher than they were at pre-COVID. Thank you, Chair. That's me done. You're silent, Chair. Maybe you're muted.
Yeah, that's all right. It's those problems haven't gone away, Richard. We just had two instances of departing. I'm sorry, guys, but I think we have some IT issues. But when I'm on Teams, I don't know what it is. No, don't seem to be able to sort it. But every now and then, it just kind of disconnects itself. So if there's a pause between you asking me a question and my replying, it's probably because I'm nowhere in the ether somewhere. It's not that I've drifted off or got to make myself a cup of tea. It really is a pain in the backside, but there you go. Yeah, thanks for that, Adi. So, hey out there, Steve.
Hi, thanks very much. Just a very quick update from us. Obviously going to echo the comments about the joint working, particularly around the officer group and particularly in respect of all the health and safety implications connected with COVID. I know that's taken up a lot of time. Our COVID cases remain extremely low, thankfully, which has allowed us to carry out and continue all our services, so nothing has been seriously impacted. And the only other comment really was that our fly tipping remains high and remains a serious issue, which we're flagging up through the Strategic Waste Officer Group. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And before we go any further, really, if any of your staff out there are suffering with symptoms, please send them our best wishes for a speedy recovery. It seems like it's not the sort of thing that any of us would like to get, but for those that have got it, you hope you get well soon. Charlotte, your hand is up, so I take it you'd like to be next.
Yeah, absolutely. So same as everyone else on the partnership working, and also we've been monitoring the impact of COVID as everyone else. October tonnages are steady. Our bulky waste collections, though, in the last 3 months are up 170%. So like Ian, we have doubled our capacity, and we're still looking to see if we can do any more with that. Fly tipping still remains for the last 3 months up 112%, with October being 156% more than it was last year. We're also expanding our garden waste and seeing if we can support residents with curbside collections as much as possible. And finally, we've been working with, as part of the District Council's network, working with DEFRA on the Environment Bill and the upcoming consultation, and feeding that into the officers group alongside John to make sure that we're as ready as we can possibly be.
Thanks, Charlotte. Thank you very much. I wish you well in your endeavours with DEFRA. If you manage to make some headway with them, you'll be doing better than anybody else in the entire country. So, who have David Steels, please?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I shan't repeat what my colleagues have said with regards C19. Safe to say that we're doing an awful lot of work with regards to that. I know that we currently chair the health and safety in the officer groups, which is taken up a lot of time, but it's a worthy endeavour. We're still supporting the weekly strategic group meetings, which John chairs, which we're certainly finding very useful. We've not seen any impacts on this recent lockdown in terms of ability to deliver services. We're still carrying on with the Kerbside Collections, albeit with increases very similar to what Charlotte has mentioned with regards requests for Kerbside Collections and fly tips and such like. We've got a report going through to our executive board with regards paper and cards. Members might remember that we've got an ambition to look towards starting twin stream recycling in autumn of 2021. So that report is looking towards getting the member buy-in for that, and then we've started discussions about how we consult with our local communities, and hopefully the outcome of that we will know and understand by March of April. But obviously happy to update the partnership with how that goes. Alongside it, we've put off a review of our rounds, a route review. So all being well, we would like to integrate that with any changes that we make with regards to our collection regime. That again will be in autumn of 2021. In terms of other activities, on Tuesday of next week, we've organised a big environmental crime partnership working group meeting. So this is involving the public sector through all the districts, the police, environment agency, other agencies as well as the public side with National Farmers Union, Countryside Landowners Association. Basically to take the scrap campaign and the positive messages that we've followed through with that, with making sure that we are operating in a consistent way, and with the consent of all these other agencies, to make sure that not only are we collecting the the fly tipped waste as well as we can, but also to make sure that we're following up with appropriate enforcement and appropriate responses. We've had, as I say, we've had very good responses. Police and Crime Commissioner very supportive of these actions as well, and it's likely that he would be looking towards organising a follow-up event sometime in 2021. That's it for Northcote Stephen. Thanks, Chairman.
Thanks very much, David. Yeah, I appreciate your efforts. Councillor Martin Foster has his hand raised now. I have to say, if you're going to give your the East Lindsey contribution, then please feel free.
It was exactly that. Victoria was planning to attend this morning, so in her absence, I'm quite happy to give the East Lindsey report, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
But you're not quite as good looking, you know, Martin.
I'll just do my tie up a bit better. There we go. Okay, thank you. The last full council, we agreed to bring our fleet maintenance in-house. We had some issues over the last 12 months with our current contractor, and then also with tendering for a new contractor, so we agreed to bring it in-house. We've leased the workshop from LCC. We're looking at the staffing and taking some of the staff over from the current contractor and some additional staffing. We're looking to purchase the equipment from the current contractor as well, or purchase new. And we've also agreed to purchase, or at full council, an agreement was made to purchase 2 additional RCVs to cover when our current fleet are going in for service and maintenance. So that's all been a very busy sort of period to try and get that in order. And we're working towards April 21 to commence that in-house operation. From a staffing point, we've also had a couple of crews with the same sort of issues as everyone else has mentioned. But we're fairly fortunate, we hope, with the collection of the green programme going into its winter phase, that we'll be able to cover the staff for those staff that are going down. And again, our wishes go to those staff members that are in isolation or have actually got COVID at the moment. Like everybody else, we've seen an increase in bulky items for collection, so that's putting quite a strain on us as well. Obviously, it's not a programme that makes money unless we try and look at increasing the sort of prices for collection of bulkies, because we're running at a slight loss at the moment on that. But we haven't been so bad on the fly tipping, so fortunately we've not had the problems that some of the other districts have had with that. That about covers it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Martin. Appreciate it. I think that's everybody we've been around. I think there's only one thing really left for me to say, and that's, you'll have noticed that the measures we've been operating the HWRCs under, they managed to continue. It's been business as usual for us on those centres, and I'm sure that's been appreciated by the public. It's certainly some justification from my point of view that what we thought would happen has happened, and it has made no difference to the way we operate. So we're continuing with that. I'm sure that you guys will have noticed and have reported increase in bulkies from a collection point of view. That's obviously a little bit perhaps difficult for you, but it's the most economically and environmentally friendly method of dealing with those items. So I'm glad that's working well. On the complaints front, I was interested to see what I'd received. Sort of since we reopened, because the way councils report stuff, complaints has been a bit of an issue for us, in that we've jumped up to from none last year or 1 last year to 70 this year, which is a huge percentage increase. But 70 complaints from all the changes that have been made to all the systems, and the number of transactions we had is like, it's hard from my point of view. It's something we have to take account of, but nothing to worry about. And I've actually received 17 complaints direct to me personally, so I guess some of those are going to office as well. So I think if all we've had is that level of complaint, then I think that just goes to show the service has been running as well as could be expected, and probably better than in a lot of areas. So I'm quite cool with all that. Thank you all very much for your updates, and if anybody wants to ask any questions about anything from our side of the fence, then please, you've got a couple of minutes now before we move on to the next item, which will be Matthew. So just to get you teed up, Matthew, you're on next. If nobody indicates in the next couple of minutes, then we'll go straight to you. Steve, please. Yeah, no. I know I'm getting deaf, but I still need your microphone on to be able to lip read properly.
Sorry, apologies for that. There are major changes that have taken place at the HWRCs, and I know it's been debated at some length. I'm just wondering, is there any intention of the County Council to do any satisfaction surveys of customer users? I know you talk about being customer centric. I just wondered if you were looking to do anything about how utilisation and how customers feel about those changes.
Yeah, that's one of the things that was in Matthew's paper, and we've decided to put it off for a while because we're still dealing with these COVID restrictions all across the piece, and there's still some sort of debate about whether you should actually be going to the household waste recycling centre. Is that an essential journey? One view is, of course, it isn't. Another view is, of course, it is. So I think those sorts of things still need to be worked through, and because at the moment we've now been running since July on this current system. We've now done a reduction in hours to account for drop-off in green waste, which we're seeing everywhere except in Spalding. But there are also the light issues and security issues. So people feeling safe on sites in the dark evenings. And I think perhaps when we get to next spring and we have a full season or a full year's operation, then those customer surveys will come into account. I'm quite cool about it in some ways, in that I would like to see all those people who I've spoken to on the sites all across the country who all tell me it's wonderful, how much more they appreciate, how much safer they feel, how much less stress there is, more time to get rid of their materials in the proper bins rather than just chucking them up. I'd really love all that to come through, because that would help me defend the 70 complaints we've had. I would much rather be able to sit there at the table and say, yeah, we've had 70 complaints, but I've got 2,500 compliments here. Which do you think is most important? Well, obviously, trying to deal with the complaints is very important. But it's also really important to realise that the changes you've made have found favour with a great majority. Victoria's just turned up with a great majority of people. That's a really good message to send. But so we will do the customer satisfaction surveys, and I think once everything is settled down and people have got used to this, because I do think this is going to be the new norm. I don't think it'll be back to the good old bad old days. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is the new norm. So let's get it settled in, get people used to it, and then we'll see how we're going on.
Just as a follow-up question on HWRCs, I think I'm expecting that Matthew's report will show a significant drop in the tonnages that are going through. So presumably there's a significant saving for the county council. Is that right?
If only. Yeah, there has been a reduction in tonnage. Of course, there's been an increase in costs across the piece, and not just from our operations, but from everywhere. The decrease in tonnage has obviously been as a result of taking out the inappropriate use that was happening before, which is the great majority of it is trade waste, and we've got some evidence gathering going on with from the county planning perspective, which will show that the increase in tonnage going through the commercial waste disposal sites has gone up. Anecdotally, I get messages from commercial site operators thanking me for my efforts in making people go and increasing their business. That they're rubbing their hands with glee, because all those people who were using the taxpayer-funded HWRCs as a method of disposing of trade waste to increase their profits are now finding they can't do that. So it's been a really good thing to do, in that the trade waste is going the way it should be. Let's opened up the space on the HWRCs for the public to be able to dispose of their waste in a more appropriate manner. Like I said, we are seeing improved recycling and greater customer satisfaction from dwell times on site. So,
can I just come back, Eddie? And obviously, I've heard that argument before, and I picked that up with Biffa, because obviously we've got a commercial contractor with a commercial and industrial waste arm, and I've asked them if they could have a bit of a dig through the industry and see what they might find. Other than a few householders increasing their skips and a bit of bulky stuff going through, they don't seem to be recording anything like the volume increases and drop-offs compared to the HWRCs. But I'll be really interested to see what you find.
Yeah.
My last comment was really just about carbon, and I know one of our main objectives is about carbon footprint. Some of the complaints I've had is that people are having to make multiple visits to the sites, and I know the background, know the reasons why, or what the county have set out, but it is potentially having a carbon footprint impact. I'm just wondering whether we're going to be able to measure that as part of our carbon assessment.
Well, again, as part of Matthew's paper today, there is the development of the carbon management plan. So, I mean, that's on the agenda. But your question is more specifically about the number of visits you need to make to the household waste recycling centre. And I have to say, you don't have to make any more than you did before. I don't see any reason why any household needs to visit the household waste recycling centre once a week, from a personal point of view, because I can only speak from the amount of refuse we produce here, and I haven't been to a household waste recycling centre other than to visit it and see how it's operating and to help out in 2 or 3 years. But it's my personal circumstances maybe. So I don't see why people need to go to a household waste recycling centre that often. If you do need to go, then you don't need to go more than once a week or any more times than you did in the past. But what you do need to do is plan your trips to make sure that you take the right wastes on the right days. It's just the fact that you can't take all the waste on the same day doesn't mean to say you have to go twice in the same week. Take everything you need one week on one day and everything you need the next week on the next day. You do the same with your bins. You put your bins out on different days, on different weeks at home. Do the same with your visits to the household waste recycling centres. No need for extra journeys at all. And in fact, most people, I think, if they thought about it, they could probably reduce their number of trips to the household waste recycling centre. Having said that, my experience having visited the tips is there are a lot of regular folks. There are a lot of, I don't mean it to be ageist and or anything like that, but it is noticeable that there are a lot of people of an age who plan their trip to the household waste recycling centre to visit, to coordinate with their visit to the shop, and they perhaps do it 2 or 3 times a week. And daft as it seems, there is a social element to a visit to the household waste recycling centre. It's part of their routine. They go to the shop on this day and they take this material to the tip. They go to a different shop on a different day and take a different material in, and it's all part of their social life. And I wouldn't want to stop that. And there's no criticism intended or implied of people who make those sorts of visits. But it's really strange, isn't it? You wouldn't think that a household waste recycling centre is part of the social network of the county, but it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have Councillor Wright, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I still find it strange that we're giving a lot of airtime with regards to the household waste recycling centres and what some residents are saying. Now, it doesn't mean that we totally ignore residents, but we have a few seconds from everybody with regards to the percentage increase on fly tipping, and then we can spend hours over several weeks dealing with a few complaints. I use the household waste recycling centre. I'm doing some DIY, and I just make sure that I go on the day when you can take nearly all the materials that you've generated on the same day. It's not changed from how I used it before, except I have to book it. And I would not want to see the booking system to go away whatsoever, because as far as I'm concerned, what it's doing is focusing people's minds and making sure that they actually take the right materials on the right days and recycle them, instead of just throwing them all in one big bag and throwing them in as general waste and getting rid of them that way, which totally defeats the aim of household waste recycling. And I've known a few people that use the system. I've had one person that's complained to me, and everybody else has just said, "Isn't it great that you don't have to queue out the gate anymore? You're not fighting for space in the lines. You can near enough always park outside the actual part of the waste centre you actually want to use, and it's a lot better." To my mind, we should be concentrating on the fact that the fly tipping's gone up, and one of the reasons the fly tipping's gone up is because it's residents. Don't forget, the rubbish is generated predominantly within our county, but not necessarily entirely, because some of it does come across. But there's far too much rubbish still being given to unlicensed waste carriers. People are allowing their waste to be taken, and it's being dumped in the hedgerows, and that's what's going to cost us all the money, because it's going to cost, whatever we talk about the cost savings to the county, or with household waste recycling, or we talk about any of our costs, the disproportionate amount that we have to spend on fly tipping, because people just will not abide. And we see it on social media. It's everywhere. You can see people just fling a message up, "Oh, can anybody come and take my fridge? Is there anybody know somebody that can take this, that, or the other?" And you hardly see a comment saying, does anybody know of a licensed waste remover to come and take my fridge? So I think we should be spending more time trying to sort out the public messaging with regards to the fly tipping and making sure people are abiding by it, rather than just, we've got a percentage of people that think if they keep complaining that the system will just be scrapped and they can go back to enjoying their day at the tip when they just go and take the big black bags down there and throw it all in one big container. That is counterproductive to what we're trying to do with regards to improving the waste stream. And I'm just so frustrated that there are still the complaints coming in. And when you actually drill down into it, it's because they just don't want to book. They don't see why they have to book. Why can't I just go to the tip? Well, everything has to be booked nowadays. If I was to talk about whether I've got access to a GP or not, then I think the household waste recycling booking system outstrips that about 100 to 1. So just a little bit of frustration, Chairman.
And shared, I have to say. And thank you very much for that. It's the sort of thing I've been saying all the time, trying to convince people. The booking system is what's created the space on site. The booking system is what's allowed us to keep the sites operating through all this pandemic. And the booking system is the one thing of all things that is definitely here to stay. Not that I intend changing any of the other operations. And that what it does do is give you that bit of dwell time on site to put your stuff in the right place. Because Richard's right. Richard's right. That it is true that people will take advantage and stick everything in a black bag and just lob it in the skip and get out of the way. And what we did in the past, it's just not on. The sites were closed. We're not very much utilised during the week. They were as busy as hell over the weekends. We had traffic queues. We had problems with people pushing, shoving, all that sort of stuff. We don't get that. We've managed to distribute the number of visits across the day so much better, which gives you people that confidence to come to the site and do their recycling properly. And when Steve was asking about the cost savings, the cost increases have been, our sites are now open for 45 hours a week more than they were. That comes with a cost. That's been offset by the drop in penny. Now, you may say that, I don't care what you say, really, as far as it goes. Yeah, that's what we needed to do, keep the sites operating, provide the service that people want, at a price they can pay. And I think it's Richard's right. It needs to stay the way it is at the moment, because it works. And unless you want to say something else, Richard, if you could put your hand down, please, that would make life easier from my end. Because I think we now have Councillor Stevens.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Last night we had a meeting, and the mayor who was ranting on at you when you came to the meeting in Boston about the HWRC was ranting on at me again, because apparently last Sunday the waste transfer the HWRC was closed in Boston. I just wondered, is it due to COVID, because it was staffing issues apparently, is it due to COVID? So I can report to them tonight. There's another meeting tonight.
Yes.
It's COVID, okay. And again, the mayor's question was, because he works, he's got a cafe and his wife is a teacher, is it possible on certain days to have like a late night opening? Could that be considered for the future, please?
Yeah, as I said to him on the scrutiny panel when I attended, that is something we'll take into account for the coming season. I don't think there's a lot of point in trying to instigate at the moment until we're work through this second phase or spike or whatever they want to call it. When things settle down a bit again after Christmas, hopefully, and we start planning the operations for next year, yes, we'll try and incorporate within the particularly with the Boston and anybody else who thinks it may be useful. It may be that we try and run it across the county. Is change some, so the opening hours will be the same, but their position within the day we may try and change it. And I know, the data shows that Boston in particular is an early morning site, as indeed is a Spalding early morning site. But some of the others are slacker in the mornings, and we could perhaps do as hours that go later into the evening and give people the chance to come on another day. So we'll be able to try that as we go forward.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah,
it related to purple bins. Again, at this same meeting last night, I was giving an update about the bins and the rollout as much as I know. And also I was making them aware that there's going to be no side waste with the purple bins or with the other bins as we move forward. And again, they hit me on top of the head with a stick, metaphorically. And it was put to me, what about somebody who's really disabled, extremely old and not as strong as they used to be, and they've got a very big, strong cardboard box to break down? Answer me that, please, because I would like to report back to them tonight.
I don't know what you want me to say, Yvonne. I mean, yeah, it's whether it goes in the purple bin or the blue bin or the bright, they've still got to deal with it.
Yeah. Is there any systems that are in place to assist, like the disabled or the person who says, look, I'm on crutches, I'm in a wheelchair, I can't put my bin out, can you help? And is there anything like that we've got in the system, please?
Well, if it's an issue with the bins at home, then I'm not trying to pass the buck here, but there's something that I have very little influence over, or the county has very little influence over. If people have got to deal with the waste at home, it's an issue for the district.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, there's probably no end of our officers wanting to come in on that. That's Yvonne. That's for your authority to deal with. We have assisted pull system, so you just need to check that internally. That's not really for the partnership, to be honest with you. That should be in place already.
Thank you very much for that. I can report back now then. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you, Councillor Wright, for your intervention. One of the first times has been useful. Thank you. Can you put your hand down, please, Yvonne? Yeah. Something else in the conversation, is that anything for me? I don't think so. That's all right, Victoria. Pleased to see you here. I don't know if you have. Martin did a great update, so I think we'll take it that he got it right.
That's great. Thank you. I apologise. Many apologies.
No worries. No worries. Pleased to see you, even if it is only virtually. In that case, if there's nothing else on that, then we'll move on to Matthew, please, and your paper on the whatever it is.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I've got two papers today, and this first one is on the waste performance measures. I will now try to share on the screen the charts from that paper. I'm hoping it'll work. If it doesn't, then we shall have to revert to the old thing of the fact that it was in the papers shared for the meeting. Chairman, can you just tell me, can you see those charts?
What charts would they be, Matthew?
Have the
Oh,
charts?
yeah, cool. Now we can. That's fine.
We can, right, good. Okay, so what we have here are the charts. As you may recall, we decided we would have 4 themes of performance measures for our work. The one on which we've already agreed as a partnership, 2 key performance indicators are measuring our performance against the waste hierarchy. Unfortunately, this year, COVID has had a bit of an impact on our work, clearly as it has on other things, and it has had an impact on our performance. I would say at this stage, and bearing in mind the conversations that have just happened, the officer working group, the strategic officer working group, and the meeting that David Steele's referred to that's happening this week in terms of looking at environmental crime and fly tipping, various groups are working on a deeper dive into the numbers in terms of what's happening now, what we think is happening going forwards, what we can do to try to make sure things are happening for the best and performance is the best going forwards. What I've got at the moment is an analysis of where I think we stand in terms of our overall performance for this year, given the impact that COVID has had so far. There's good news and bad news in terms of performance for this year. The bad news is our recycling rate. You can see on this first chart, the gold line at the top shows our forecasted recycling rate for the year is down this year compared to last year. That's largely because of the loss of HWRC tonnage and the high level of HWRC recycling during the 2 months or so that we were closed for COVID. That gap is something we're not going to manage to get back, regardless really of how well we do the rest of this year. The figure of 43.1% that I'm estimating at the moment is a forecast based on what seems to be happening at the moment, but it's hard to tell. It depends on whether there are further implications, further lockdowns, what happens in terms of a vaccine, where we actually end up. So it's a tricky one to forecast, but 43% is the best estimate at the moment, which, as you can see, is down on where we were last year and down on our target, which clearly was set pre-COVID, so we didn't know that was going to happen to us. The other thing to look at, though, the good news, is we targeted keeping our kilograms per household below, for the year, below 1,000 kilograms, so less than a tonne per household, and we are quite considerably below that. We're below 980 kilograms is our forecast for the year. That again is largely down to that missing tonnage, lost tonnage. Not quite sure how to describe it for those couple of months when the household waste sites were closed. And whilst some of that waste, presumably people hung on to and came back to us when the household waste sites reopened, we've not seen a major upsurge. We've not seen a return of that quantity. So the forecast for the year is that we will have less waste for the year, which overall is definitely a good thing. Waste minimisation is good. It's good if people have produced less waste this year. And to be clear, that figure does include all of the tonnages that we as a partnership deal with, including fly tipping. So it's not that we're still handling it in another way. All of our tonnages look to be adding up to a significant reduction in overall tonnage for the year. In terms of some of the specifics of that, I would say, having said that the overall tonnage is down, some of the details behind that, some of the bad news is that curbside tonnages seem to be up, so districts are having to handle more waste at the curbside. I guess partly that's because people are working from home. The waste they're generating is at home, is going in the bins at home rather than elsewhere. But it's a more complicated picture than that. But as I say, it's something that we as partnership, we as officers for the partnership are looking at, trying to break down into the details of. Moving on to the second chart that I've got, another element of good news is that the mixed dry recycling, the curbside recyclables, seem to be going up. We look to have more for the year than we had last year. And this percentage line at the top is the contribution to the overall recycling percentage that's made by mixed dry recycling. That's up by about 1% from last year. So that's the good news. Another item of bad news. I'm sorry to be doing the good news, bad news, which seems to be alternating a bit. It wasn't a plan, but the green waste. This is overall green waste composting, so it's through household waste sites and at Kerbside. It does go up and down very much with the weather, but it's looking like for the year we'll have the least green waste composted per household that we've had, certainly for the last 6 years. It has been suggested that might be because early on, if you remember back in the spring, early in the growing season, we had some exceptionally hot weather, and that may have then affected growth really for the whole year. And it looks like for the year we will have, as I say, less green waste than we might otherwise have expected. And this, again, this gold line is the contribution of that towards recycling. So in the same way as our mixed dry recycling was putting our recycling rate up, unfortunately the fall in green waste is bringing our recycling rate down. And that's partly why we've seen an overall fall in the recycling rate. Just moving on to the fourth chart. This chart again highlights that good news that overall the tonnage is down. Unfortunately, where the fall is in the recycling element, which is why the recycling rate is down. And we've seen a reasonably similar quantity of residual waste. So the red and the gold bar together are red is landfill and gold is energy from waste. The good news about that is we've sent more to energy from waste and less to landfill than we had in previous years. But the total residual waste is about the same. What we've seen is a fall in the quantity of green waste at the top and of recycling through household waste recycling centres, which is the bulk of what's in the blue bar. So good news, less waste. Bad news, what we seem to be missing out on is recycling. So that's the headlines from those. I'm afraid while I'm sharing the screen, I can't see if any hands are up. So, Chairman, can you let me know if there are any questions at that point, or shall I take all questions at the end?
Yeah. No, I think it would be useful if you could answer them now while the stuff is still fresh in people's memories. So, and I have an indication from Pete Mosley, please.
To these actually, because we're showing a reduction in tonnage per household by about 22 kilos, but we know that our curbside was up by about 30%. Now we know that was why that was, I think, because of COVID, because actually things like restaurants and pubs and the like were shut, so everybody was eating at home and the like. And it's just not it's not squaring the circle for me. I'm really struggling to understand where there's a gap there between a 30% increase in curbside and only a 20 kilo per household in overall is really. And also again, I'd like to understand a bit more about the green waste, because I mean I'm assuming that the gap, the reason that we're showing a figure of as the lowest contribution that we've ever had on green waste is because of a closure period. Because actually, I mean, we've seen a massive increase in uptake of green waste and a massive increase in volume. So I think there's quite a lot of work to do to understand that, and I'm not entirely sure I believe what's on the screen there at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I would say that those totals are our best estimates for the year at the moment. What we are trying to do more work on is what the situation is now. A lot of that difference, as I said, and as you pointed out, was down to those couple of months when things were very different to previously. We did actually, in total, even though at times, as you say, curbside was up by an awful lot, we did see less waste in those couple of months coming through as a partnership overall than we did in the same months in 2019. What we do need to do now is get a better understanding of where we're at now, where we think the new normal is, and if we're in a different normal to what it was pre-COVID, we need to understand what that is and what impact that's going to have going forwards. I would say in terms of those totals, looking at all of the figures and all of the waste that we as a partnership handle overall, including all of the fly tipping, all of the curbside, all of the household waste sites, everything, it is down on last year. And unless there's a major upturn the rest of this year, we will overall have had less waste. But I do hear what you're saying, and I do fully understand that the figures at Kerbside have been up by, as you say, up to about 30%. They are still running, it seems, higher than 2019. But overall, those tonnages are down. But we need to get a better understanding of what's happening with them and why, and what we think is going to happen going forwards, and whether if there's anything we need to tackle, such as really getting a better understanding of why Kerbside might be up and might continue being up. That's work that we need to do, and we'll, I'm sure, come back to the next meeting of the partnership.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Pete. Yeah,
Can I just follow up, Eddie?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to just touch on paper card and effectively the Amazon effect, really. It was nice to see that, there's been an increase in what people are recycling. A lot of that probably has a lot to do with the fact that we're having a lot more stuff delivered to our houses rather than going out and getting it at the moment. And that's all coming in card and paper. And I'm just wondering if whether we've got a steer or not on how much that separating out that is likely to impact on the recycling rate, or is it not? I'm just wondering what that is, because obviously we're seeing a downward trend on our recycling rate, but we're predicting to head upwards to 50%, and I'm wondering whether or not there's something we can do there that can harness that.
Yeah, thanks. Do you want to comment on that, Matthew?
I'm not really probably the best one to comment on the paper and card. I do know that in terms of the trial and in terms of what we're seeing as results from the trial, we have seen improvements in recycling rate in those areas. I don't know if anybody else would like to come in on that, John, or... Yeah,
well, John's got his hand up, so if it's okay, Pete, I'll pass it to John now. Yeah, could you...
Well, obviously on Matthew's graphs, we can see that the projection for the current year is that curbside dry recycling will be up compared to last year. So it is having an impact there on the curbside tonnages. I suppose with regards to Councillor Mosey's questions about the robustness of the data, what we do is we start every year with a presumption that it's going to be the same as last year unless there's any operational or policy changes we know and can model that will have an effect. And then we overlay that with actual data as we go through every quarter. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at 6 months worth of actual data with the remaining 6 months worth of projected data, which is reflecting last year. And as Matthew's already said, so many things can influence what those tonnages are going to be, principally the weather. We all know it has a significant impact on the garden waste collections. It also has an impact on others. So we see dry recycling will be affected if residents are able to get out into their gardens. It's not just about keeping gardens tidy, it's also about enjoying that space. So barbecues, parties, etc. If the weather's decent, they go up. So associated wastes and recycling from those sources go up. And we are always subject to whatever's happening. So this year it's COVID. It's had a dramatic effect on not just Lincolnshire, but I don't think there's a waste disposal authority I have seen that isn't reporting significant tonnage reductions, significant impact on their recycling rates. This is just going to be a strange year, and in years to come we may look back and see that it was a significant interruption to the positive progress we've been making. Yes, as Councillor Mosley rightly says, we've modelled paper and card and what the impact will be and what the contribution to the recycling rate is. What we find in most trial areas is that what the trial can deliver exceeds our modelling, because, so for an example, for the paper and card, we know what we get through the materials recovery facility, which goes at the end of the sorting process. But in trials everywhere else, and in the trials that have taken place in Lincolnshire, once you give people a separated collection of a recycling material, they become more engaged with the issues and surrounding why we're doing it and also why we want it. And then the yield goes up and the quality goes up. So we've modelled what we'll get as much out as we are getting through the sorting process through the MRF. Our hope is that we will exceed that because the residents of Lincolnshire will overperform. And as Councillor Mosey rightly says, there's now going to be more material in the system, and that's not going to change for the future because more of us will be living a home-based life, both for work and for family and for other reasons than we have in the past. So more of it will be coming into the household, and therefore more of it will be going out of the household. As ever, it's modelling, it's not perfect, and circumstances can knock your best predictions off course. It's every year is not always a straightforward linear line going upwards. Thanks, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, were there any other questions there, Chair? As I say, I can't, because of how I'm sharing, I can't see hands.
Yeah, if John could put his hand down, please. Roger Gamble-Jones, please.
Hi, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. It's just a general comment on we need to be aware that waste actually gives us more information than we're probably acknowledging. And the fact that the depression in the economy actually demonstrates the consumption rate of the nation as reflected across all councils, and the fact that actually the generation of waste was an indicator of that, and what we've seen in those figures indicates that to us all, and you won't recover some of those figures, so that's a write-off in all of those areas. And the Amazon effect that was referred to, Amazon are probably one of the best ones for actually generating waste that can be recycled. My experience is that many of the other people that send us stuff send us some pretty awful product when it comes to its ability to be recycled. The amount of expanded polystyrene bits and junk that they use to wrap stuff in and package stuff is pretty awful. I know it doesn't weigh very much, but it takes up an awful lot of space, and the only place it can go is in the black bag, and unfortunately you then have to deal with that at the county level and through the energy from waste plant. So there's a lot of bulk and not a lot of weight going in there, I know, but it has to be dealt with. So there's an issue there if we are going to have this economy of delivery and production of waste there. So that's going to be a problem going forward if people have got used to having this delivery system come in. So that's an acknowledgement of that process that we've all become used to. As I say, Amazon are generating good paper and card for us, but the others people aren't. They're wrapping everything up with tape and making people get fed up with trying to unpack it and putting that in the general waste rather than the recyclable, because they get sick to death of trying to unwrap things and they think, well, they won't want this. And if we do want that recycled, maybe we need to tell people that we're willing to take it, and stuff like that. But it's general consumption when we do go into lockdown depresses the whole economy, and that complexity of that calculation is something you may need to consider as well, because I think when we do shut ourselves away, it drags everything down, the whole consumption rate and everything else that goes with it. So I think that's what we're seeing here, not just a waste stream, but the whole impact on everything we did and everything we were doing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. I think you'd finished because my computer went off again and I didn't get the last bit. It's
that's no bad thing.
Oh no, maybe not. It's really strange. I mean, this is what kind of always gets my goat about figures. You know, they can, like I say, lies and statistics. They can be made to prove almost anything. So when we first reopened the household waste recycling centres for green waste only, Spalding was absolutely chock-a-block, absolutely booked to the rim. Hardly anybody else turned out across the county. It took them 3 or 4 weeks before the others caught up with Spalding, which was full near full every day of the week. And it's this green waste phenomenon. We even now, I mean, this week on a black bag day on Monday, we had 148 bookings in Spalding. And on Tuesday, when you can bring your garden waste, we had 308. We do not get that variation in numbers across anywhere else in any of the other sites in the county at all. And I don't know where all the waste comes from. I don't know where it all goes to. But I think the important thing from my point of view, and you probably would expect me to say this, wouldn't you? The total tonnages show that the overall intake of waste is down, and that includes the fly tipping. It includes the fly tipping. So, that missing tens of thousands of tons of waste ain't fly tipped. It ain't stood in people's garages because you can't hide that much. It's gone to the proper, appropriate place to be disposed of. It's not been stored up anywhere. It ain't just been magicked into thin air, unless there's been an enormous bonfire. And I think even that was down this year, wasn't it? Black bonfires, I noticed certainly in our area. So this waste ball, I find that's probably why I enjoy it so much. It's fascinating where the rubbish comes from, where it goes to. But I think we've done a pretty cool job. John, you got your hand up again. Do you want to say something else in response to what Roger mentioned, or was it a legacy?
No, it wasn't a legacy. Thanks, Chair. It was just to pick up on that, and that's why we've established the sampling station, and we're recruiting the sampling team, which will give, hopefully, insights or answers into a lot of the questions that members are raising. And the reason for doing that is that we won't be reliant then on buying in consultancy once in a blue moon to answer the questions that we're asking. We'll be able to do it all the time, focus on areas that we're interested in, the partnership are interested in, particular trials we're running, so we can then get the detailed evidence and information to help us have these discussions and also plan our future strategies and policies. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. No, it is difficult, and I understand why the point you were making earlier about not trying to do these projections for 6 months left over from last year and 6 months of this year. I mean, when you look at the figures on the visits, the amount of time it took for people, for a lot of people, to feel safe enough to come out to dispose of their waste at the household waste recycling centre is enormous.
Is it just me, or have we lost Eddie?
No, I'm back.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah. As people felt safe going out, they were starting to bring the stuff in and the figures built. But we've never ever been fully booked. There are always appointments available. Come and visit the household waste recycling centre. It's a marvellous experience these days. Matthew, would you like to continue with the?
I will. I will do. I was just going to say, in terms of what you were just saying about household waste recycling centres, it's one of the things that I have been, we have had some initial conversations about, is trying to get the message out there to the public about which sites are busy and when, because we find some sites like Great Northern Terrace are very heavily booked, whereas there are other sites which have lots of gaps. And if we can make it clear to the public where there's a gap, get people to think about, well, if I drive 5 minutes longer in the opposite direction, I can get to a site where I can get a booking rather than
you can get a booking at any site in Lincolnshire on any day when they're open. There are always slots available. We don't want to be encouraging people to drive all over the county because they must go at 10:30. I mean, if your life is that ordered, then I feel sorry for you. But there are opportunities to go to your local, your nearest household waste recycling centre, and there are slots available.
Thank you. Just to cover off the other three themes that I mentioned, and they've all come up in conversation, I'll just cover them briefly. The next one was contamination of our dry recyclables. As has already been mentioned, the Boston sampling station is now working, and we're recruiting people to actually do the sampling, so we will be getting better information. We already identified that whilst a headline figure of how much overall contamination it does give us a kind of blunt measure, it's going to be better once we can actually measure what is in that contamination, how much there is of which materials. So that's something we're working on, and we'll come back to a future meeting. In terms of carbon, the proposal is to develop a dedicated carbon management plan for the LWP to set out where we are at now and make some proposals for where we can go going forwards. The work on that, the proposal on that, will have to wait a little bit because of the LCC staff who deal with that element of things are currently working on the Green Master Plan for the county, and clearly the carbon management plan would have to fit into that and be a part of that and work together with other things going on in other areas. So that's one to come, although I would in the recommendations like to recommend to the partnership that we approve that work to happen when it's able to happen. The fourth topic is customer friendliness, and just to highlight some of the good things that are happening at the moment. We've got the residents panel that Rachel Stamp is running for us, where we've got over 650 members of the public who are giving us their input on our services and helping to develop future services. And we are also doing things like Waste Wednesdays, getting video messages out there to the public. There is a lot of engagement going on with the public. And as has already been said, though, in terms of the proposal that had been there to go out and ask general customer satisfaction questions in the County Views questionnaire, that has been put on hold. The thinking is, in terms of, as Eddie's already said, in terms of household waste recycling centres, we're in an unusual situation at the moment. We want to ask people once we're back into a more normal situation when we can get a fair result in terms of what people's satisfaction levels are. And the view in terms of county was that although we said we were going to ask a question about district collections as well at the same time, we certainly didn't want to go out and ask just the district question if we weren't asking about the county service. So that is on hold at the moment, but we'll come back once we're able to ask that in a more normal time. So the recommendations are basically that you note the information that I've just given you, but as I say, I'd appreciate approval or work to proceed when it's able to in terms of developing a dedicated LWP carbon management plan. So, Chairman, are you happy to put that to folks now?
It'd be embarrassing if I said no, wouldn't it?
Well, it's partly, as I say, that the work wouldn't be able to start immediately, so we might want to come back and make a decision when we know it's more able to happen.
Well, I think I am very happy to put these recommendations to committee because I think we need to show that we're carrying on with doing the work. Things always change. I mean, we never know what the future is going to hold, but if we can't just put it off doing things because we're a little bit unsure, we're always unsure. So let's get on with it, Matthew. It's been a good report. You've generated a lot of debate and a lot of questioning, and given members a lot of food for thought. I'm sure, because the figures just so variable, aren't they? And we don't have all the answers, but we've got to do our best to find out as many of them as we can. So, if there's nothing further, and anybody else has any questions before we move to the acceptance of these recommendations. We've got two choices. We can either do this by a roll call vote, or you can all be sensible and just tell me if you dissent. There is nobody showing dissent, so I'll take it that those recommendations are carried. Thanks very much to members, and thank you very much for that report, Matthew. And that leads me swiftly on to your next report.
I think there's another item in between.
Oh no, Rachel's coming in the middle, is she? Gives you a chance to let the vocal cords recover, Matthew. Thanks, Rachel.
That was the plan. That was the plan.
Good day, see you.
Thanks very much. So, good to see you all. I think the update that I'm going to give in the paper that's in the pack is an update to the Joint Municipal Waste Management Strategy Action Plan. A lot of what's in here we have talked about, which is great. It actually shows that despite COVID, or as well as COVID, we are carrying on where possible business as usual. You've just said it's really important. So we gave a similar update week before last to the Greater Lincolnshire leaders as well. And again, greatly received. And I think it echoes, and just for the minutes, the thanks given to staff across the whole service, from the front line all the way through to the senior officers group. That came out loud and clear from that as well. So in terms of the actions, the 4 areas, we've got the operational improvements and projects. Obviously, the food waste collections still continue in South Kesteven, and will continue to do so at this point. And Ian Yates is keeping us as strategic officers aware of the progress of that. The twin stream trial. So if we talk about this in 2 elements, the trial around the collection of separated paper and cards across the 3 districts will continue at this point in terms of the households that have been within that trial now for just over a year, whilst we develop the project around implementation and get that off the ground. That continues to go well, and as we've spoken about a lot, the sampling that we're getting from the quality of materials being collected and taken over to paper processors is showing exceptionally high quality, over 98.5% consistently in terms of the quality that's being collected from there. So those households that were nominated in those trial areas will continue, along with the improvement of the mixed dry recycling in that twin stream. So again, a lot of work, as you're aware, has been put into engagement, and this partnership agreed that engagement was crucial. I think when we last met in person, way back now in county offices, and that is paying dividends. We're seeing from the initial sampling we've been able to do that the quality of the mixed dry recycling coming out of those trial areas is again exceptionally high, with a great reduction in contamination there. I don't particularly think we have yet enough samples and data points to predict a trend whilst we get the sampling station manned. However, the early indications from there show that our target materials in there have gone up in terms of percentage, and the contamination is coming out. So that's paying, again, dividends. We've done a review of the common set of recycling materials that's been undertaken. So the A to Zs that are now consistent across all 7 districts and the county website, they've been reviewed. No updates put forward in this quarter, so we continue with those, and we learn from any ongoing frequently asked questions about common items. There's been nothing to add or change to that list. Our project around the reduction of fly tipping, as is been alluded to by all of the partner updates, fly tipping is high on that agenda, and David Steels gave us the update that next week there is the multi-agency environmental crime partnership working group that are going to build on the scrap campaign and the work that's been done on the days of action by some of our partners and create the consistent approach and action plan. So we'll be able to bring that update back to the next partnership, which I think will be important because it is high on everybody's agenda. The next project that we have in the paper is the implementation then of the twin stream recycling, which is paper and card, and the improvement to the mixed dry recycling. And just by way of headlines of that, we are now in the process of the procurement exercises required to look at providers for receptacles and also for an offtake partner for that. So that is ongoing at the moment, as is work by the Strategic Officer Group to come up with a consistent framework around engagement and enforcement. We are currently writing and about to launch and trial, hopefully by Christmas, with the operational team in Boston, as they're the first authority rolling out a training programme for their staff to ensure that all staff are bought in and understand why we're doing, what we will be doing on the ground, and how their part is really important. So that again is from the crews on the front line, the customer service staff and all the operational staff. So we'll be completing that in the next 3 weeks, that package, with a view to rolling it out. Again, mentioned sampling many times. So we have now a cabin at the transfer station at Boston. I'm currently right in the middle of the recruitment for staff to man that. And that's going to allow us not only to support this project, but also, as we've mentioned, allow us to be able to take deep dives into any of the recycling and residual streams across the county to understand the behaviours that have gone on, and then work with our staff to do the appropriate engagement and communications around that. So very exciting and very busy times in terms of that. And I know that each of the waste collection authorities are having their own conversations and making their own plans, and working through TEEP assessments that need to be carried out to make that a reality. In terms of our communications then, a little bit like we talked about the health and safety working group and the officer working group, I'd like to just put it on record how well the communications group are working now together to provide consistency of messaging across the county. Certainly through COVID-19, there's been a very good response and consistent approach to putting out relevant communications across the county. We've kept up with the scrap campaign and those communications, and I've come out of a session this morning where we're looking at our programme for Waste Wednesdays going forward, which has been a great way to engage, and the Christmas communications that are going out, and making sure that we are focusing, as well as the messages of what we want, on the reduce, reuse, recycle messages going forward in there. I think that's really important in terms of the waste minimisation. And those communications campaigns will be focused very much on the positive. I think we've heard a lot of negatives this year and what we can't do and what everybody's wanting to do and not. So we're taking the angle around what the positives, what we do want from you as residents going forward over the Christmas period and the new year. We've got the section in the report then on assets and infrastructure, and again John Coates gave us the update earlier around replacement HWRC site at Kirkby-on-Bain, and our ongoing work to understand the future landscape and our requirements for future disposal and treatment facilities. Where there are any specific projects in there, they'll be added to this action plan going forward. And one piece of work we do have in there at the moment is there is a dewatering facility currently under construction in Sleaford, aimed to be completed before the end of the year. We've had an update on the key performance indicators from Matthew already, and the governance of the LWP, and I think his next paper will also focus a little bit on the objectives of the strategy which fall into that. So that is a whistle-stop tour of the action plan at this point. So I guess the recommendation is that we continue to review the action plan, and I think we'll get feed-ins on specific items through each of the officer updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Does anybody have any questions for Rachel, please? Please, somebody has some questions for Rachel. Yeah, apparently not, Rachel. Come on, Merv, go for it, man.
Yeah, Rachel will know that I've broached this subject before. We're obviously having a communications blitz, if you like, to encourage people to recycle and to do more. I'm just wondering whether there's more that we could do when we get back to some semblance of normality, whatever that is, as regards schools, because I see children as sort of the next generation, if you like, of recyclers, and there's an awful lot of value in pester power. Just sitting here thinking now in terms of sampling and stuff, whether there are simple projects that could be introduced into schools, because everybody's aware of climate change and the need to recycle more, upcycle, reuse things. Simple projects that kids can do to analyse what the parents or what goes into their bins, if you like, to encourage people to recycle more. Something that's very simple. It doesn't need to be complicated, that schools could get involved in. I know with junior schools it's a lot easier because you can work lots of maths and English and all sorts of things into these projects. But I just wonder whether it's worthwhile as a partnership looking at the ways and means that we could mobilise the younger generation, because they are invested in this, and at the end of the day it's their world that we're trying to protect and improve. So I put that over to you, Rachel. You know, I'm keen on education with kids. Whether other members have got any thoughts in relation to those sort of things.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I really appreciate it. And you're absolutely right. The kids are already switched on to it, and if we can encourage them to pester their parents to do more, I think that's a really good way forward. But do we have anything worked up yet, Rachel?
Not at this point, but it does form part of the thinking around as we introduce the performance and improvement team, that part of the engagement. So we have done some preliminary work with schools and also with the university as well. I think it's important that we do make sure that we capture all generations around this. So I think it's always on the radar, Councillor Head, and I know we do speak about it. And where we can get that introduced as part of the engagement, I think it's completely the right thing to do at the right time. I know Nicole's got a view on this as well.
Yeah, it's not so much a view, Rachel. It's more about a really pragmatic and practical way in through children's services. So in LCC Children's Services, they have school liaisons where newsletters, etc., go out on a monthly basis. So that would be a really quick and efficient way of doing it, with an offer of invite of those schools who were particularly interested in working with us, and say practical ways of either going into the school or organising visits, obviously when it's COVID safe to do so. But we've used that liaison group an enormous amount of times for a whole range of different subjects. And they tend to be really interested and really happy to have something new to discuss and get on the school, not the curriculum, but on the school agenda. So I think we would be welcomed.
Thanks, Nicole. Richard.
Thanks, Eddie. It's just on that same theme and how you engage with young people. When they built the straw burning energy plant at Sleaford, one of the things they did was an educational package, and one of the things that they used to good effect was a scale model of the plant, which basically, it lit up. You could demonstrate from where the straw was delivered to how it went through the plant and what the resulting, sort of energy output, all that kind of thing. It was just a tool that went along with everything else. Now, I'm not suggesting that we build a model of the Highcombe plant, because that's just one part of the strategy. But all I'd say is that there is the old adage of spend a little to save a lot, and perhaps we could look at how we engage with pupils of all age groups, because I don't think we can start them too early on this subject matter, and that perhaps we need to just stop and check and look at how we'll engage in what tools are we using, and is there something perhaps better or something more innovative we can use to make sure we engage the pupils with the way they want to be engaged, rather than the ways that we fall into, even with best intentions. It's just worth having a think about it before we do that.
I completely agree, and I think that's an action there in terms of the whole engagement process as we move forward to embed our behaviour change going forward for this twin stream and wider across the county. So I will take that away.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Rachel. Anybody else?
Eddie, there might also be another thing that we can consider, working with the university, because they're really keen on the science and technology stuff. So just building on Richard's comments about having a scalable model. They also do that at the EFW, which is really, really popular with young people. So I'm just thinking we could extend that into kind of an exhibition programme that we might want to run at the Collection Museum from a kind of science and technology basis, about all the innovation and creativity that there is in this industry. We could do Waste Through the Ages. We could get the university to come in with some of their kit. They've got those kind of small AD plant or the biodiversity experiments that they do. So we could actually run something, throughout the Easter holidays or something like that.
Yeah, cool. Anybody else? No. Well, if Nicole and Richard would put their hands down, please, we'll move on to Matthew's second paper. Thanks very much, Rachel. Appreciate it. Good stuff.
Thank you, Chairman. The good news is I will be more brief this time. I'm not intending to go through each of the 10 objectives item by item unless anyone would particularly like me to. What I was asked to do was to go through the 10 strategic objectives, because it's amazing how time flies. It's a good 3 years now since we first mooted them and first started talking about them. They did change during the process, but they were adopted now nearly 2 years ago, our new strategy. Since then, various things have been happening nationally in terms of the National Resources and Waste Strategy. There are things on the horizon, like the consistency agenda for waste collections, enhanced producer responsibility, deposit return schemes, various things in national policy that we will need to make sure we're taking into account. And also the impact of COVID-19 on society and on our performance. Looking at all of those things together, though, I've looked at each of the 10 objectives, and they are in detail in the report, an analysis of where we're at with each of those 10 objectives. But overall, my proposal to be the result of this review is that the objectives, are all still valid. Apologies, I'm looking to the side, by the way. I've got the information on a separate screen. The objectives are all still valid and are in line with emerging national policy. But also, whilst the LWP are making good progress towards achieving most of the objectives, COVID-19 has had a negative impact on some of them, and particularly on our recycling rate. Thinking about the COVID impact and our recycling rate, the good news is that some of the work we're doing, such as the paper and card trial and then rolling that out, and the food waste, which is on the horizon as looks probable to be mandatory nationally, both of those will see a significant upturn in our recycling rate, and we will be moving in the right direction again on that. But in terms of other things that we've achieved, we've done, as I say, things like the paper and card trial. We've now got a common list of recyclables that we publish across the county. Our food trial went well. We have developed a suite of performance indicators. We've talked today about having a carbon management plan. We're already working on developing capacity to process the food waste when those collections have to come in. And as a partnership, we've achieved an awful lot. And we are moving ahead with most of those objectives. So that's where it stands, basically. And I would like to recommend that the partnership approve the findings, those provisional findings, that the objectives are still valid and that we're making good progress, although we note the negative impact of COVID.
Thanks, Matthew. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Matthew, please? No? Yes. John Coates.
Me again.
You're in trouble now, Matthew.
Not at all. I suppose it's just to do a bit of forward looking, isn't it? So we know we're expecting the second round of consultations from DEFRA in the spring. That's going to give us the greatest clarity over what is likely to appear in the legislation. So all of these workshops that Charlotte and I are attending for the District Council Network and for LARAC, they will have to put some of their ideas down firmly, so we know what to be able to plan for over the next 2 years. We've been alluding to our infrastructure strategy, which does need to wait and see what comes out in the legislation. But given the government's announcements over how future vehicle fuels, they say we will have a lot of opportunities through the waste we collect for other alternative, sustainable and renewable fuels such as hydrogen and biomethane and electricity generated from renewable means, which I think we will want to probably review our objectives in light of when we know what 2023 is looking like, because I think it's going to kind of shift our focus away from dealing with the problem of waste and how to increase recycling and how to move more into areas of genuine reuse or repurposing of what we're collecting. There'll be a certain element of the stream which will become secondary raw material for recycling, so they will want the glass and the metals and the plastics and the paper and the cardboard, but from everything else we can produce, as I say, sustainable renewable fuels for whatever type of purposes they want, either vehicles or other industrial processes, and that'll be a significant opportunity for us to address the carbon management challenges and a lot of the ambitions that all the members of the partnership have got for reducing the carbon impact on the environment in Lincolnshire. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Anybody else got anything to say? Please indicate now. Or Roger.
Yeah, I mean, Boris has already thrown the cat amongst the pigeons to some extent, and although it seems a long way away, with the ban on production of petrol and diesel engine vehicles 10 years earlier than everybody was anticipating. So I suppose there's some early preliminary work required on what councils will need to do and how they will manage that, and what the thinking around that is for rural authorities, because you can see the urban metropolitan thinking that's in that statement straight off the bat. And about the impact that will have. Obviously, we don't know what the future holds when they're talking about that sort of thing, and what the vehicles are likely to be, and what the future of waste is. But we can only plan for what we know now, and feed in our concerns based on how things are done today, and what we see as the future for waste collections. Yes, it may be monthly by that time because everything's being recycled, but people will still need a collection of some description, and there will still be a vehicle doing it. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that the partnership and our successors will appreciate us beginning to think about what the implications are of that statement made by the government, about how that will factor into the thinking of our successors in the future, and what sort of work we need to do and begin to do on their behalf as we move forward.
Thanks, Roger. Yeah, it bothers me a bit, I have to say, when this headlong rush towards electric-powered vehicles where they're not really considering the alternatives. Existing manufacturing processes for internal combustion engines don't need to change very much at all to accommodate being run on gas. And we're not talking about natural gas here, that is slightly correct, but biomethanes and biofuels that have zero tailpipe emissions can be just as effective, if not more effective, for us in rural areas than electric vehicles. And certainly when it comes to RCVs and heavy transport, Scania have been running biomethane powered lorries now for 15 years or more, perfectly reliably across the world. It's just that we haven't bothered over here because we, like they haven't in the States, because we're still using relatively cheap and available petrochemical industry products. So things will change, but putting all your eggs in one basket, as with the electric thing, seems a bit daft, because not only do you get the pollutants of producing the battery, where do you get the electricity from? You have to burn more natural gas. Anyway, Pete, you had your hand up, please.
Yeah,
it's a really welcome intervention, because since the last time you spoke, your picture's been frozen. It was only when you indicated to speak that you actually looked live again.
Okay, I turned the video off, actually, to be fair, but that was the thing. Yeah, sorry about that. It's on now anyway. I was just going to say it links in quite well with what Roger was saying. I mean, when we looked at the carbon footprint of SK, one of the biggest sources of our carbon is the waste collection and the street scene. It's the vehicles, and it's a real challenge. It's going to be that's the bit that's going to be the thing that makes or breaks us, I suppose, in terms of trying to get to net carbon zero. And the innovation's not, I mean, you've talked about the gas powered vehicles, and that's out there, but it's not what I'd call accessible really at the moment. And I think there's a lot of work got to be done. I don't believe electric is going to be the solution. It will be part of the solution, but not all of the solution. And I think the biggest issue that you're going to come out with now is, I mean, even now we're looking at issues with supply for standard residential developments. If you add in curbside charging or under street car charging and all of this kind of stuff, there's no way we generate enough electricity to even contemplate thinking about that at the moment. So there are real challenges ahead, and no matter what happens, there's also going to be a huge cost on the collection authorities, and that's why probably more than ever the reduce message needs to come out. Because at the end of the day, if you can reduce what people are giving you, if you can get people to change their lifestyles to generate less waste, then we don't need to perhaps have as many vehicles going around, and we can spread those collections out, and that's going to generate more benefit to us than some of the other solutions there. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, quite right, Peter. Thanks for that. And you're right on so many points there. There is no single solution to the transport problem. It's going to take a variety of different technologies to make sure we can all do what we need to do. I have another indication here from. Oh, I can't see anybody's hand up in the lip. Yes, I can. That's you, Pete. No, I don't. I have nobody else showing. Did anybody else want to get involved in this debate? No. Councillor Richard Wright.
Thanks, Eddie. It's just, I mean, obviously you're looking at the vehicle side of this, but John's comments and the 10 points cover far more than that. And it just struck me that there is still more to be done on upcycling. We're looking at the waste hierarchy, and that has to change. I mean, the joys of COVID and working from home have given me access to this afternoon programme where all you need is a 60s sideboard and some gopping wallpaper, and you make 750 quid. So there's got to be still some mileage in us promoting that instead of waste actually coming to us. That how do we repurpose it? How do we have an impact on that when actually what we're seeing is a waste authority? So people are always going to assume that all we deal with is throwing waste away. There needs to be some way we can get the messaging across, or some relabeling somewhere where we can start to have an impact on that. Because I mean, on a serious point of view, there is an awful lot thrown away that actually still has a purpose to some people, but by the time it gets into our system, it's already lost, isn't
it? The thought you watch daytime TV just fills me with dread. Yeah.
I glance at it.
But it's right. I mean, we are a very sort of disposal authority for society, aren't we? You know, we throw stuff away that our parents and that would never dream of throwing away. More to be done on the reduction and reuse. I think that, you know, that's the key principles for us, isn't it? Always open and should long remain so. Cool. Well, in the absence of any other indicated speakers, then I guess thanks for your contributions to that. We need to move to item 8, which is the partnership forward plan. And we've published a few things. If there's anybody would like anything else to be put on the future agenda, please say so now. Or if you're shy, send us an email after the meeting. What's that? Yeah, we're on there. So nobody's spoke up. So I guess that's about it for today then, ladies and gentlemen. And Richard, thank you very much for your attendance. It's been a joy seeing you all, even if it is only virtually. And my apologies if I'm even more disjointed than normally. This IT problem is just doing my head in. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.